Okay, so Leonardo da Vinci. We all think we know him, right? The Mona Lisa, the Last Supper. He's basically the superstar of the Renaissance. But what if I told you that's only half the story? And honestly, it's not even the most interesting half. We're going to dive into the side of Da Vinci you don't know, the complex, hidden, and, yeah, the much, much darker side. So to really get Leonardo, you've got to wrap your head around this just wild contradiction. I mean, on one hand, you've got this super gentle artist, a vegetarian, a guy who would literally buy birds in the market just to open the cage and set them free. Then on the other hand, you have this same guy designing these cages of death for men. Some of the most brutal, terrifying weapons you can imagine. This isn't just a guy with a few quirks. This was a mind totally at war with itself.
And look, this wasn't some abstract thought experiment. No, this is a direct quote from his own private notebooks. About his scythe chariot, he wrote, "These rotating blades will cut humans like wheat." Let that sink in. The same mind that gave us the Mona Lisa's smile was also figuring out the most efficient way to mow down soldiers on a battlefield. It's chilling. So how on earth does someone like that come to be?
Well, that's the thing. This change from celebrated artist to war engineer, it wasn't a slow, gentle shift. It was a complete break, a total transformation, really. One that was forged in public humiliation, in this desperate, burning need to start over from scratch.
Okay, so this is the timeline of how it all went down. It's a real turning point. He's just 24 years old, a rising star, and bam, he's publicly accused of homosexuality. In that era, that could ruin you. And it did. He basically disappears for 4 years, totally isolates himself, and that's when he starts writing in those secret notebooks. By 1482, he's broke, he's desperate, and he decides to make a huge gamble. He writes a letter to the Duke of Milan pretty much begging for a new start.
And here's the absolute kicker. In this letter, which is basically his Hail Mary pass to save his career, he doesn't even really mention art. Think about that. He doesn't lead with, "Hey, I'm the guy who's going to paint the Last Supper." No, he knew that to get in with this crowd, beauty wasn't the currency, power was. So he pitched himself as a completely different kind of genius. This was his new identity. He basically says, "I can make weapons. I am a war engineer." He then goes on to list, in detail, all the incredibly brilliant and horrifying ways he can help the Duke defeat his enemies. He was literally rebranding himself from an artist into a merchant of death. And you know what? The Duke was buying. So now he's got the Duke's money and protection, and Leonardo's mind just explodes. This becomes one of the most creative, most intense periods of his entire life. He's churning out designs that they're both terrifying and completely awe-inspiring. We're talking stuff that was hundreds of years ahead of its time. Let's just run through some of this stuff. It's insane. A giant crossbow the size of a 2-story building, designed mostly just to scare the heck out of the enemy. A 33-barrel machine gun that could just unleash a wall of fire. And then there's this armored tank. Kind of looks like a turtle with cannons sticking out in every direction. He wasn't just making better swords. He was trying to industrialize war. But just when you think, okay, I get it. He's a cold-hearted military strategist, the story takes a twist. There's a little secret, a mystery, hidden right inside his own drawings that makes you question everything all over again. Get this, historians have found that in some of his deadliest designs, like that tank, the gears are drawn in reverse. If you actually tried to build it from his blueprints, it just wouldn't work. Now, was this a mistake? From Leonardo da Vinci? Not a chance. So was it deliberate? Was this the artist, the bird-freeing pacifist, secretly sabotaging his own work to make sure these death machines never saw the light of day? It's an incredible thought.
Of course, Leonardo's brain couldn't just stick to war. While he was designing all this stuff to conquer the ground, his real obsession was conquering the sky. He wrote, "Once you have tasted flight, you will forever walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward." He was absolutely consumed by it.
And his work on flight is a perfect window into how his mind worked. At first, he did what anyone would do. He tried to copy birds exactly. He designed these ornithopters with flapping wings. And yeah, they totally failed. But then he has this massive breakthrough. He stops trying to copy what the bird does and starts trying to understand why it works. He figures out the secret isn't the flapping, it's the curved shape of the wing itself. That's what creates lift. He was figuring out the basic principles of aerodynamics like 300 years before it was officially a science.
So after his whole phase as a war engineer, Leonardo turns that same obsessive intensity inward. He moves from studying the mechanics of death to studying the ultimate machine, the human body. He was determined to decode the blueprint of life itself. And to really appreciate how revolutionary this was, you got to understand what he was up against. For 1,500 years, 1,500, medicine was stuck on the ideas of an ancient Roman doctor named Galen, who had never even dissected a human being. So you had these crazy ideas like the heart being a furnace for the soul. Leonardo comes along and just shatters all of it.
He looks for himself and proves no, the heart isn't some mystical furnace, it's a brilliant, precision-engineered pump.
And he did this at huge personal risk. This was forbidden. He secretly dissected at least 20 human bodies, usually at night, by candlelight, in some freezing cold cellar. Can you imagine? Peeling back layer after layer to see how this incredible machine actually worked. This went way beyond science. It was a deep and honestly dangerous obsession.
Here's one of his most mind-blowing discoveries. For, ever, everyone just assumed blood flowed through the heart in a straight line, like water through a pipe. Makes sense, right? But Leonardo, he's looking closely, and he notices the chambers of the heart aren't straight, they're curved. And he thinks, maybe the blood doesn't flow straight. He figures out that it actually swirls in a vortex, a little whirlpool, and that spiral motion helps the heart valves snap shut perfectly, saving a tiny bit of energy with every single beat of your life.
So how did he prove this crazy theory? With an even crazier experiment. He gets an ox heart and he injects molten wax into it. He lets it harden, then carefully removes the actual heart tissue around it. What he's left with is the world's first perfect 3D model of the inside of the heart, proving its complex pump-like structure. This is something that medical science wouldn't be able to confirm until 500 years later with modern MRI scans. Absolutely brilliant.
So you'd think a guy who basically cracked the code on art, war, flight, and the human body would feel pretty good about himself, right? But the last chapter of Leonardo's story is it's a total tragedy. It's not about success at all. It's about loss and this crushing, overwhelming feeling that he was a failure.
And his world just fell apart, one thing after another. First, his partner in all the anatomy work dies in the plague, and he loses his access to the hospital. Then, the Pope himself bans him from ever dissecting again. He's forced to move to France, basically in exile. And then, the final, cruelest irony, a stroke paralyzes his right hand, the hand he used for everything.
And what that leaves is just anguish. His last notebooks are heartbreaking to read. He's looking back at these thousands of pages of incredible discoveries, and he doesn't see genius. He just sees a pile of unfinished projects. He literally writes, "Tell me, was anything ever completed? I have wasted my time."
And his supposed last words, they just gut you. I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have. The man who could see the future, who understood the world better than anyone alive, died thinking he was a complete failure. The greatest genius of his age died in despair. So, how do we make sense of this person? All these contradictions. Well, modern experts actually have a name for it. They think Leonardo may have had a mixed cognitive phenotype. Now, that's a mouthful, but it basically means his brain was wired differently. He had traits we might now link to ADHD, jumping from topic to topic, never finishing anything. But he also had this super intense obsessive curiosity and an unmatched talent for seeing patterns no one else could. That unique wiring could have been the very source of his genius, and also the reason he always felt like he was failing.
And here's the final, tragic irony of it all. After his death, his notebooks were saved, but they were hidden away. They were basically lost to the world for over 250 years. All those incredible discoveries, anatomy, flight, engineering, gone. The world had to start from scratch and reinvent everything he'd already figured out. So he died thinking he was a failure, and for centuries, nobody even knew how incredibly wrong he was.
So today, we celebrate the artist. We all line up to see the Mona Lisa. But the real Leonardo, the conflicted one, the war engineer, the secret anatomist, the brilliant, frustrated man, he's still pretty much hidden away in those thousands of pages of notes. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? We know his art. But will we ever fully know the man behind it?